One of the best ways that you can put the American worker first, simply raising the minimum wage. I think so if Donald Trump is willing to sign a pledge and say,
it
actually does.
Look at the states that actually are. You cannot sit there and raise the federal minimum wage when you're pushing business. We're already pushing businesses out of the United States.
From the city of Seattle, already raising the minimum wage to
it is not fact.
You see, as an African-American woman, I'm a beneficiary of affirmative action, both formal and informal programs. Perhaps I would not be sitting here today as a lawyer without it. Affirmative action is defined as any measure that permits the consideration of race, national origin, sex, or disability, along with other criteria, to provide opportunities to individuals who have either historically or actually been denied those opportunities, and or to prevent the recurrence of future discrimination.
So the mainstream media wants to continue to try to label our president a racist.
What that means is profit at any cost. Capitalism has not always existed in the world, and it will not always exist in the world.
The fact is, Democrats play the race card every chance they get because it shuts down debate.
At this point, I'm emotional.
And let's fix it.
Because we cannot, it's like being constantly gaslit. We're constantly being told, I'm told every day I'm on air that I'm racist because I call out racism. That is maddening to me, and I'm crying about it because it's crazy. And I wish that somebody who's a colleague of mine, like Alice, could at least acknowledge that fact. Like, that is so frustrating.
President Trump is not racist.
President Trump's comments towards the quote-unquote squad were not racist.
Patriot Act and the Iraq War. In order for us to feel safer in our streets, our churches, our schools, and our homes, we must abolish ICE. This is the legislation that we need, and this is the legislation that is going to move us forward as a country.
Okay. Michelle, what is this big pull now? Get rid of ICE, as if they are the problem as they crack down on illegal immigration in our country.
Yeah, I don't just question the patriotism of the Abolish ICE movement. I question their sanity. And the danger I see is that it's become a mainstream view. Ocasio-Cortez is a member of the Democrat Socialists of America. This is the same group that organized the protest against our Homeland Security Secretary at the restaurant. These are shrieking radicals who oppose any immigration enforcement. It's not just that they want to reduce the 20,000 workforce of ICE or reform it somehow. They want to abolish it. That is clear. And President Trump is absolutely right when he calls out these people and says that they don't want borders at all. And what do they propose to replace ICE with? I think the little summary that the Democrat there just gave of why ICE was formed in the first place is missing the crucial context. Remember, guys, that it was after 9/11 that we realized that there were upwards of 600,000 deportation absconders within the country, that 40% of all of the illegal aliens that are here were as a result of visa overstayers, and that there was no interior enforcement to make sure that people that we knew were here illegally were being tracked down and kicked out.
Economic segregation is a very real thing. It's at the root of these deadly confrontations, but law enforcement didn't create that economic segregation.
Okay.
The politicians who are now attacking law enforcement, like one of our fellow panelists, are the ones that created that and allow it to continue. Cops are there to make those neighborhoods safer, to try to make Black Lives Matter, to try to allow these kids to see a future where many don't.
Let Angela respond. I believe you were talking about Angela. Go ahead.
Yeah, so first of all, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't anything that was hate-filled or anything towards law enforcement. I worked for 40-plus members of Congress who have never done such a thing. So I reject that, and I hope that you start telling the truth on air, because we have an awesome responsibility to try to end some of this conflict.
Issue, Angela.
So that's, did you say whatever?
Angela, just to...
Anyway, so let me read this, because we had Donald Trump's statement, we had Hillary Clinton's statement, and we're talking about an entity that is supposedly anti-police. I hope it's not Black Lives Matter, because this is what Black Lives Matter said. They said Black activists have raised the call for an end to violence, not an escalation of it. Yesterday's attack was the result of the actions of a lone gunman. To assign the actions of one person to an entire movement is dangerous and irresponsible.
And to that end, I stand with them in solidarity.
Did you see the way the Black Lives Matter protests?
So what I think is very important is for you to understand, just like there are rogue cops who shoot black people for sport, there are rogue protesters. There are people who are
That's the most offensive thing I've ever heard on this network.
Well, you know what's more offensive than that to me is you calling an organization.
We're mounting heads on the wall. That's what law enforcement is about.
Angela, do you think it's inflammatory to say that police officers shoot black people for sport?
No, I don't. I think that is exactly how I feel. And when you look across this country at the data, when you look at why these folks in the streets are angry, we have been saying this for years.
It's because of that rhetoric.
We've been saying
you're the one fomenting the violence that resulted in cops' deaths last night.
Let me finish my
Shame
point.
on
Because
you.
Shame on you.
Facts are not racist.
The media instantly said that is racist, and nothing could be further from the truth.
I also think that what people are starting to see, at least in the occupation of Palestine, is just an increasing crisis of humanitarian condition.
You use the term the occupation of Palestine?
I think what I meant is like the settlements, places where Palestinians are experiencing difficulty.
Do you think you can expand on that?
I am not the expert on geopolitics on this issue.
Well, that is clear. Here to react, Michael Knowles, host of The Michael Knowles Show. Michael, good to have you with us.
Abby, good to be here.
All right, you listen to the DNC, and that is the future of their party.
That is the future of their party. I think she's a good representative. The Democrats at this point are proudly ignorant and thoroughly anti-Israel, so it makes sense. This poor girl, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is not making a great first impression, and that is the lasting one. What do we know about her since her campaign hit the national stage? She is a liar. She lied about her upbringing. She pretended to be from a poor part of the Bronx and grow up there. In reality, she grew up in a ritzy part of one of the ritziest counties in the country. I know this because I grew up in the town over from her. So we know that, and now we know that she is proudly ignorant. She has this great line. She says, I don't really know a lot about this, but I firmly believe, frequently wrong, but never in doubt. She uses the slogans that we've seen from Democrats now for the past 20 years. We heard in the Bush era, Bush lied, people died. He didn't. We heard no war for oil. There wasn't one. Now we hear Trump colluded with Russia. There's no evidence of that. And the myth of Israeli-occupied Palestine, which I believe is the country east of Narnia and west of Wakanda, is another example of that. Margaret Hoover in that television program scratched just below the surface, and Ocasio-Cortez had no answer. She didn't know anything. All she had learned was ideology. I think apparently Yorktown High School is not as good as we all thought it was.
So by the way, Michael,
learned these.
To your point, she went to Boston University. She says she doesn't know geopolitics in that interview. She majored in international relations. So obviously this is something that she claims to know a lot about. Kudos to Margaret Hoover in that interview for simply listening and following up with, can you please expand on this?
To these leaders, to get your congregations to vote or there will be violence. Is the president engaging in classic fear-mongering here, Steve?
Well, look, I don't know why he says that there'd be violence because of the Democrats winning. I do think he's correct, though, in pointing out that political violence, unfortunately, is ascendant in America, and it's active on both the right and the left, yet mainstream media seems to only care about it when it emanates from somebody on the right rather than people like Antifa.
It's the tweet that's been heard around the world. Trump has brought in a record low black unemployment.
Not only am I eager to discuss the issues with you, I'm willing to offer $10,000 to your campaign today.
Wow. All right. First, the challenge, and then the rejection. Conservative commentator Ben Shapiro calling for a debate with Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He wants to debate her. He wants to debate her on the issues. The New York congressional candidate taking issue with Ben Shapiro, tweeting out, just like catcalling, I don't owe a response to unsolicited requests from men with bad intentions. And also like catcalling, for some reason, they feel entitled to one. Whoa, all right. We called Ocasio-Cortez and we asked her to come on the show. She has yet to respond. But you know who did respond? None other than Ben Shapiro for his first interview since that tweet. Ben, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Making First of all, I just want to know quickly. She's making news with you here. Go ahead.
Quick comment. First of all, how dare you catcall Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez by inviting her on your show? I mean, how dare you? That's sexism in action right there.
Yeah, apparently. What do you think of that, though? I mean, to use that term, which, you know, that's just to remind everyone, a woman's walking down the street and someone, you know, whistles or something, that's catcalling. How is what you did, asking her to have an intellectual debate on the actual issues, how is that in any way relevant or similar to a catcall?
Catcalling must be very weird in Queens. I don't know if they're like construction workers standing on street corners and shouting to women, hey, baby, want to have an hour-long public conversation about trade policy and the vagaries of Viennese economics versus neo-Marxist economics? It gets strange in her district, apparently. But again, this is so many folks on the left jumping to a sort of intersectional defense in which anybody who requests a discussion or a debate must be evil by their very nature, right? I'm a man, therefore I am catcalling her, even though as an Orthodox Jew, I have never catcalled a woman in my entire life. It's catcalling because I guess if I suggest that I want to have a conversation, I'm demanding a response. Well, every request is a request. All she had to say here was, nah, that would have been fine. I mean, she's got that prerogative, but she goes around talking about how...
I mean, that's part of our platform,
absolutely.
right? Everybody's a victim, and you know, we need to take as much money as we can from everybody else to redistribute it. That's what socialism is about. So is she just playing that victim card?
No question. And the fact that she feels the necessity to go to this particular card, right, to play the I'm a female and therefore I'm being victimized, this is like catcalling. The fact she goes there instead of just saying, you know what, I'm not interested in debate, the reason she didn't say the latter is because she didn't want to look like she was afraid. And she's been going around on the internet suggesting that people like Ali Stuckey are afraid of her when they make satire about her, or that people on the right are deeply afraid of her perspective. And then the minute that somebody says, you know what, I'm willing to have a discussion or a debate with you, and not only that, just to make it worth your time, I'll give money to charity or your campaign, then it's all of a sudden catcalling if you suggest such a thing. It's pretty amazing.
Do not buy what the Democrats are selling.
Wake up, people. We're talking about people of color.
Who, by the way, even that name I hate to use because they act a lot like fascists for people who are supposedly anti-fascists. All they try to do is suppress free speech, is intimidate people, is harass the police, many of whom happen to be minorities, by the way. So those are the tactics of Antifa, and they are fascist tactics, in fact. So he's correct to point that out. I don't know. I'm a bit puzzled as to why he says if the Democrats take the House, for example, that means Antifa will rise further or will use violence more so. So that part, I don't agree with, but I certainly agree with him that political violence is never acceptable. And we hear a lot of folks on the left make excuses for Antifa while they properly will assail the racist thugs in a place like Charlottesville who killed that young woman. While they'll go after them, they won't then use that same lens of criticism or that same view of criticism of leftist violence, which is totally unacceptable as well.
So Angela, your face says everything, but, television is about sound, too, so go ahead, speak your mind.
Wow. I guess I would love to hear from Steve. How many Antifa incidents is he aware of? How many Antifa incidents do you know about, Steve? Okay. Well, while
quite
you
a
think
few.
about
Do you want me to
it,
go
let
through
me
the
just
list?
say.
Do you want me to go through the list? Because I'll tell you one of the first ones.
No, I don't want you to go through a list. I would love for you. Yeah, and the question was, can you provide a number?
Which they did in Portland.
Can you provide a number? Okay. Well, instead, let me help you because I'm not going to let you filibuster.
Well, don't ask me the question if you don't want to hear the answer, Angela.
I'm sorry that you didn't want to answer it the way that I hoped that you would, which was honestly, and that was
that I don't answer the way you want. That's how the left operates, isn't it? If I answer the way you want, you're tolerant of my view.
Yes, I'm on the left.
Otherwise, you're not tolerant.
Okay, let's not get sidetracked.
That is liberal intolerance.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. And you have just exhibited exactly what's wrong with this country right now. So we can stand on polar opposites or we can call for human decency. And what we know regularly is the one with the bully platform that consistently urges violence, that consistently trolls women of color and people of color on Twitter is the one with the bully pulpit, the bully himself, Donald Trump. So I think before you go after the ghost and the demonic left, you all's favorite boogeyman, right? You should chin check your president on what he is regularly doing, and that is using his language irresponsibly and calling for violence on people, or at least, kind of teasing it out there that there will be a violent uprising. That's dangerous.
Well, let me just tell you, as an American, and you can obviously see my pigment, I have nothing wrong whatsoever with what our president said. I agree with him.
He needs to be going up on Mount Rushmore. He needs to come out with his own $10,000 bill with his face on it. Yeah.